This Iranian tanker was seized last week by British forces. The Grace 1 was suspected of breaking sanctions by taking oil to Syria. Iran threatened retaliation. Now this. U.S. officials say that on Wednesday, a UK oil tanker, the British Heritage, was approached in the Gulf by 5 boats believed to be from Iran's Revolutionary Guards, and they asked it to stop in Iranian waters. But the officials say the HMS Montrose, a British warship, quote, pointed its guns at the boats and warned them, and so they then backed off. The U.S. claim has been backed up by the British government, but rejected by the Revolutionary Guards and Iran's foreign minister, who says the claim is worthless. Since Washington ratcheted up sanctions against Iran, tensions have spiked. The U.S. has moved to bring Iran's oil exports to zero to try and pressure Tehran.
While Japan claims South Korea smuggled materials to North Korea that could be used to make chemical weapons, a South Korean lawmaker today unveiled an official data that rather shows Japan's funneling of items into North Korea. Her Kim Min-ji reports.
It appears that Japanese companies may have smuggled strategic items to North Korea. Citing data from Japan's Center for Information on Security Trade Control, South Korean lawmaker Ha Tae-kyung of the minor opposition Bareunmirae Party said Japanese authorities found that strategic items were shipped to the north illegally by Japanese firms. The agency is a non-governmental organization in Japan that tracks data on export controls. Among the strategic items is hydrogen fluoride, one of the 3 materials Japan is now restricting South Korea's access to.
This happening around 42 minutes ago when Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan tried to deliver his budget speech. This is what happened. Then, of course, EFF members being moved outside of the room after they tried to interfere with Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan's budget speech. They did not want the minister to speak. Of course, the public protector's finding against him regarding the SARS rogue unit is what they're using in their defense. They say that President Cyril Ramaphosa should actually fire Pravin Gordhan and he should not be addressing anyone in Parliament.
Sun loungers bowled over like skittles. Pine trees ripped up and snapped in half like pencils. And boats flipped over and left upside down in the sea. These are just some of the chaotic scenes which have greeted residents and holidaymakers on Greece's Halkidiki Peninsula after a night of severe storms. Eyewitnesses say the tornadoes, winds and hailstorms lasted for about 20 minutes, but that was all the time it took to turn these communities upside down. A mother and her child died here at this restaurant when a lean-to outdoor roof collapsed on top of them. And 2 tourists lost their lives when the powerful winds knocked over their vehicle. Others were killed by falling trees, and more than 100 people have been injured. A state of emergency has now been declared across the region as rescue teams get to work.
Just 3 hours of heavy rain over New Orleans, and this was the result after 20 centimetres fell on the city. It's down to a storm system brewing over the Atlantic Ocean, one which is thought could develop into a tropical storm and possibly a weak hurricane by the weekend. Louisiana's no stranger to the devastation from bad weather, and preparations were underway across the state as authorities advised people to keep at least 3 days' worth of provisions on hand.
Don't wait, get food, water, and don't let what happened in 2016 happen again.
In certain low-lying areas to the south, initial evacuations have already been ordered, with officials taking no chances.
I have formally declared a state of emergency as it relates to this storm. While it is uncertain what the impact will be, we will be affected and we must be prepared. We are to respond effectively.
France's parliament gave its final approval to a tax on big technology companies. A group of 20 finance ministers agreed in June to compile common rules to close loopholes used by global tech giants to reduce their corporate taxes. But the French authorities decided not to wait and act immediately and unilaterally.
I believe it's our responsibility, us elected people, public power, to avoid the emergence of companies that would become private states, that would have all the privileges of the states without having the constraints and the surveillance which goes with it.
Political pressure to respond has been growing. Other EU countries, including Britain, Spain and Italy, have also announced plans for their own digital taxes. Austria in April increased the size of its planned tax to 5% of the advertising revenue in the country from the initially planned 3%.
This fenced-off building is called a vocational center in China. Critics say it's more like a prison, one of many detention camps run by the government. The target, they say, are ethnic and religious minorities, mostly Uighur Muslims in the northwest region of Xinjiang. Activists say at least 1 million people are detained in similar camps, where extreme surveillance, forced assimilation, and abuse are common. The camps have long sparked international criticism. In an unprecedented move, 22 nations signed a letter to the UN Human Rights Council condemning disturbing reports. Australia, Canada, and Japan are among the signatories, along with Britain, France, and Germany. They call on China to stop the mass detentions, respect religious freedom, and grant independent experts meaningful access to the region.
La technologie, oui, c'est intéressant, mais pour l'instant, la 4G, elle passe très bien, ça marche très bien pour moi, et tant que j'en ai pas l'utilité, je ne vois pas pourquoi je vais changer de forfait.
Next, people who consume a lot of sugary drinks, including pure fruit juice, could have a higher risk of developing cancer, according to a new study. The research, published in the British Medical Journal, looked at 100,000 people in France. It found that the consumption of sweet drinks was associated with increased risk of overall cancer, as well as breast, prostate and bowel cancer. Lauren Moss reports.
Bottles of pop and sugary drinks are often at the centre of the debate about healthy living and obesity. But now a study by scientists in France suggests that they are significantly associated with the risk of cancer. Researchers looked at 100,000 people for 5 years. The average person drank around 2 cans of sugary drinks a week. But the study found that if they consumed about 2 more cans on top of that, around 100 millilitres a day, they had an 18% increased risk of cancer.